This weekend, we honor the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. And we also recall the 50th yahrzeit, or the anniversary of death, of Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. Now, it's no coincidence that we're remembering these two figures at the same time, for famously, they were seen marching together in places like Selma, Alabama, and elsewhere. And Rabbi Heschel was considered a great ally of Dr. King in his fight for justice. But in fact, the connection between them went even deeper, because both of them cared very deeply about something we perhaps don't recognize in thinking about their legacy, and that is the indifference of the masses. For both Heschel and King, it was very important to recognize not only that we must call out those who are most responsible for violence or injustice, those who are really heading up institutions which are unjust or violent, but rather also to call out those in the majority, those in the center who are displaying indifference or who are not speaking up when they see violence or injustice. King famously wrote in his letter from the Birmingham jail after he was arrested for actions taken to fight segregation in the South, that he confessed that he was very disappointed with the white moderate. And he spoke in response to some Christian and Jewish clergy who spoke out against his actions. He said, Dr. King wrote, "I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that our greatest stumbling block in the stride toward freedom is not the white citizens counselor or the Ku Klux Klaner, but the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice." He speaks further about this shallow understanding that people of good have is more frustrating than the absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. And so he speaks of this frustration with those who only display a shallow understanding of injustice and don't really pursue justice to the nth degree, the way he was trying to do. And Heschel actually spoke of a very similar theology in his book called The Prophets, which he wrote as his dissertation. And he says that the prophets had a similar character as Dr. King. And so he saw Dr. King as a kind of prophet, because the prophets were people who were so bothered by injustice that they would put their lives on the line for it, who felt that injustice was a catastrophe, whereas other people are indifferent to evils, especially smaller issues, because they just take injustice for granted. He writes, "Indeed, the sorts of crimes and the amount of delinquency that fill the prophets of Israel with dismay do not go beyond that which we regard as normal, as typical ingredients of social dynamics. To us, a single act of injustice, cheating in business, exploitation of the poor, is slight. To the prophets, a disaster. To us, injustice to the welfare of the people is slight. To the prophets, it is a death blow to existence. To us, it's an episode, and to them, a threat to the world." And so, for those of us who may not consider ourselves arbiters of injustice or violence, we may think we are off the hook. But as we recall Dr. King's legacy and the memory of Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, let's remember that none of us is off the hook when it comes to fighting injustice. Each of us is an important ingredient in creating change and a positive peace and a better world.